guys, how are you? Rod Kaiser from the Refinishing Studio Learning Center. And what we're doing today in the shop is we're going to polish some hardware. And we have this really simple technique that we use in our studio every week to polish hardware. It's the easiest thing that I've ever really come across that works super terrific, and it's going to be really easy for you to do at home. So I wanted to share this with you on a video today. So every time that we do a piece of furniture like we did with this server, we refinished this server and now we're going to finish it up by putting the hardware on. We like to give the clients the opportunity to either have the hardware as it was or cleaned up and polished. People choose about 50-50. Sometimes they like it as it was, and some people want it to be cleaned up a little bit. This is one of those cases where they want it cleaned up. It's really dingy and it's not pleasant looking. So we're going to go ahead and polish this up, and I'm going to show you the techniques that we use. I think that you're going to find this really helpful, so enjoy the video. Okay, so what we're going to use here for the products to clean our hardware, we're going to use distilled white vinegar. Okay, like I think I mentioned, you can also use like apple cider vinegar if you have it around, as long as it's vinegar. So we're going to use distilled white vinegar. We are going to use 4O steel wool. It's the finest grade with the 4 zeros. Okay, we're going to use 4O steel wool. We're going to want a pair of pliers, something to pick up the hardware once it's in the vinegar. We're going to use a small saucepan or frying pan, something just to put the vinegar in, and a burner. Okay, you'll also want like some rags, whether they be a cotton rag or some paper towels. What I do is I put the enough vinegar in here just to cover. Okay, so we have the vinegar in here and just enough of it to cover the hardware that we're doing. Okay, and we bring the hardware to a boil. Once the hardware comes to a boil, which really should only take a few minutes, okay, we don't want to leave the hardware in there, you know, too long. All right, just so that it comes to a boil. We'll take it out now and we'll test it. Okay. I'm saying the hardware is going to be in there 3 minutes, 4 minutes, something like that. Take her out, okay? Be careful, it's going to be hot, so, you know, be careful. And then you're just going to brush it with the steel wool. Okay, now what you're going to see sometimes is it's going to turn a copper color, and that is just the metal makeup of the brass. Brass has copper in it, and some of it comes up more copper looking than others. Some of them don't show copper at all. Some of them look very copper color, okay? But the more you brush it, the more of the copper goes away. So you can always get rid of the copper color, but sometimes you see that first. That's the case with this hardware right here. Okay, so if I don't want that copper, so I just keep brushing it, all right, and the copper goes away. All right. Again, that's just the copper part is just the makeup of the metal alloys and percentages of it that's in the brass itself. But the more you brush it, the more you get your brass. Now, the nice thing about this is you can really control how much you clean it up. Sometimes, I like to leave it sort of antiqued and leave the darkness behind in the recesses, okay? And so sometimes I want it a little bit more polished up. Okay, so basically, you get the point. All right, so we'll take the next piece and we'll do the same thing. Now you can see how it comes out. It comes out fairly dark. Okay, so again, just take that and see how right when I start, it looks copper. All right, that'll just go right away. So you just keep buffing it with the steel wool. I just don't want you to freak out when you start buffing it and you're like, oh my God, my hardware is copper. Probably not. Give her a good buff. Pretty simple, right? I'll tell you why I like this, as opposed to polishing compound. If you've ever done that, sometimes I'll dip my steel wool, as you see in here, into the hot vinegar, and that can really help as well. If you use a polishing compound, and if you've ever tried that, you know what happens. Because when it dries, you put that polishing compound in, it stays in all the cracks and crevices and the grooves and the recesses. so that when it dries, you look at it the next day and it has this white powder all over the place in all the recesses, and you like can't get it out. That drives me crazy, and I can't have that on customers' furniture, so I don't use any polishing compounds. The only thing that I do is this method right here, because I never have that, okay? So that's your hardware, okay? That's how easy it cleans up like that. But that's all you do? Now you know how to clean your hardware. Well, there you go. Wasn't that easy? It doesn't look great, right? So, like I said, really easy little technique. But I have one more trick to show you, and this is actually really important. If you haven't already, please take a moment here and subscribe. You just have to hit that little red button that says subscribe. We really appreciate it, you know. So, when you're polishing hardware, okay, it's actually really important to know whether it's plated or solid brass. Now, on this hardware that we polished right here, what do you think it is? Think it's plated, or do you think it's solid? Okay, how we're going to tell, right here it is we're going to use a magnet. Okay, what is it? It's plated. Okay, how do you know? Brass is not magnetic, right? So it's important to know whether it's plated or whether it's not plated, because if it's plated, such as this, a lot of times that plating is very thin. And when you go and buff it with the steel wool, you buff the plating off really easily, and you start to see metal, okay? And the silver start to come through. Then you want to stop, right? And some hardware you can't even polish because the plating is so thin, or maybe it's already even gone. So it's really important to know whether or not what you're dealing with before you go ahead and do it, right? If it's solid brass, doesn't matter. You can scrub it all day. If it's plated, you have to be very cautious and know that going into it, and proceed with caution, okay? So this, like I said, is plated. Take some other hardware we have here in the shop. I'll pick this one up. What do you think? Plated or brass, right? Plated. What do you think, this one? Plated, brass? This one even looks plated, right? It is. Plated, right? Okay. Plated, brass. There we go. We got one that's solid brass. And that's what's going to happen. It's not going to stick to the magnet. Okay? So that's how you know whether your hardware that you're dealing with is plated or whether it's solid brass. And for the magnet, just grab one off the refrigerator in your kitchen. It'll work just fine. And give the hardware a test before you go ahead and start polishing it. All right? I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you in the next one.